speaking of the man who gets the fewest cheers, Michael Knowles is with us. I forced him to watch the Olympics because I just can't bear them. I mean, how were they in general?
Well, I'd like to first thank you for introducing me as the man who got the fewest cheers instead of Satan, as I expected to be introduced, or some lower order demon.
You bear a strange resemblance. I don't know what I don't know why you remind me of Satan, but
it was really awful. Thank you again for this rivaled South Side with you and Barry. It rivaled both of them. I almost wanted to watch them though because of the media coverage.
Yeah.
When we sat down, sweet little Elisa, my fiance, said, Mac, can we not watch any Olympics this year? I said, I'd love to do that, but Drew's going to make me do it. And
now
CNN,
she hates me, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The CNN headline, quote, Kim Jong-un's sister is stealing the show at the Winter Olympics. And this is just the first paragraph.
Yeah.
If diplomatic dance were an event at the Winter Olympics, Kim Jong-un's younger sister would be favored to win gold.
Holy
With
smokes.
a smile, a handshake, and a warm message in South Korea's presidential guest book. By the way, there was no warm message, but that's beside the point. Kim Yo-jong has struck a chord with the public just one day into the Pyeongchang Games. Now, this has been rightly pilloried. Obviously, it should be pilloried. Max Rosenthal of the Washington Post, which where democracy dies in darkness. He tweeted out all of these stories about how her visit played in South Korea, or about how her visit played in South Korea among South Koreans. The pile-on about these pieces is frankly tedious. And this reminds me of all of Walter Duranty's stories were about how Stalin played to an idiot New York Times reporter. Yeah. And the moral idiocy is a little tedious too. There's this, oh, come on, get off it. Stop being so American about all of this.
And I always am listening for when news people tell me, that the American people feel this, when they start to use phrases like some people are saying. Yeah. And I thought like your boss, you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Or they'll say, they'll speak in the passive voice, questions are being raised. And you think by you, basically.
Critics say.
Yeah,
Critic. My name is Critic. My nickname is Critic.
They also were attacking. I mean, Mike Pence and the Kim Jong-un's sister were sitting together, basically, watching some of this?
They were sitting together, and Mike Pence didn't acknowledge her because she's a murderous dictatress.
Oh, you picky.
I know. I'm so ethnocentric, American-centric or something. Here are some, because you're right, this is the big difference in coverage between our milquetoast vice president and this murderous monster. In North Korea, the annual GDP is $1,800 per capita. That ranks 197th in the world, and those are just the official statistics. Yeah. 125,000 North Koreans are held in concentration camps and tortured. 12 million people in North Korea are starving. They live in extreme poverty where they can't get enough food to survive. The average life expectancy has fallen 5 years since just the 80s, now down to 69, according to the official statistics. This is likely a decade higher than the reality of it.
That's amazing.
But even the Korean government can't pretend that these people live any longer than 69 years. Workers earn $2 to $3 per month. Even figuring in some black market things, it basically cannot rise to more than $10
$2 to $3 a month?
Yeah.
But that will buy you a pomegranate, I guess.
That's right. That'll buy you one of the little seeds of the pomegranate. Yeah. That number, by the way, even including black market, is a third of the government salary in Cuba. That's for comparison. Yeah. Homes receive a few hours of electricity a day if they have electricity. Most do not. Most do not have plumbing. Parents who send their kids to school need to provide desks, chairs, building materials, and cash to pay for fuel. The trouble is, school isn't school. It's a labor camp. So most parents actually save all that money and bribe the teacher not to make their children go to school so they don't have to be enslaved by the government. North Korea has free universal health care, except patients must pay for their own drugs, the cost of heat, and prepare all of their meals at home. Kim Jong-un, meanwhile, is worth $5 billion, an estimated $5 billion. So that guy, how nice, isn't this so nice? The mainstream media were calling Kim Yo-jong the Korean Ivanka Trump. They're comparing her to Ivanka. She's so glamorous, isn't she?
Very, very similar. I'm going to interrupt you to do a commercial so that you don't just vanish into thin air. But I will be right back. I want to continue this conversation for a minute. Knowles, you're talking about the incredibly crummy economy they have. But there's also, just not to kick a dead horse, beat a dead horse, but there's also the oppression. They have. I was reading who is Amnesty International, which is not exactly a right-wing site. They said that the citizens of the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea continue to suffer violations of most aspects of their human rights. North Koreans and foreign nationals are arbitrarily detained and sentenced after unfair trials for criminal offenses that were not internationally recognized. Severe restrictions on the right to freedom of expression continued. Thousands of North Koreans were sent by the authorities to work abroad, basically as slaves. The government continued to dispatch through state-owned enterprise at least 50,000 people, at least up to 120,000 people remained in detention centers, which as we know from our own guy Warren Beer, are basically killing fields. I mean, this is the guy they're praising. And then their people come on and dance, and they said how great it was.
Hundreds of thousands of North Koreans are tortured daily in concentration camps, to say nothing of the millions and millions who are enslaved. The entire country is enslaved. Yeah. And this guy, this regime, tortured to death an American college student. Now, I want to show you two clips.
Okay.
This is how CNN treated Kim Jong-un's sister.
Meantime, with the world watching the Olympics, she will put a young, telegenic face on the regime. This is a calculated move from Kim Jong-un, experts say, to answer Ivanka Trump's presence at the closing ceremonies.
Kim Yo-jong is the perfect counterpart to this. And it also is a signal that North Korea is not, this crazy, weird, former Cold War state, but that it too has young women that are capable and are the future leadership.
Young woman. There's one. And the rest are slaves.
So it's kind of just like Trump's America, right?
Yeah. So that's how CNN treats Kim Jong-un's sister.
Unbelievable.
How does CNN treat our milquetoast Vice President Mike Pence?
Now let's talk about why Rippon doesn't want to meet with the vice president. He's openly gay. He's an advocate as well. He referenced the gay conversion. That goes back to about 2000 when the vice president was a congressman, and he was supporting funding for services for people who want to change their sexual behavior or orientation. What else could that mean but gay conversion therapy?
Chris, that's something, and words are important. I know you feel this way. I of course do as well, that it certainly sounds like gay conversion therapy, but I asked the press secretary if she could give me the answer of what that was. And that was back on January 17th in our back and forth.
It goes on for about 10 more minutes. It just keeps going, obviously.
Unbelievable. It's like, and as we all know, in Indiana, gays have to live in the woods because of
This was a major pillar of Mike Pence's 2000 congressional campaign, is electrodes for gays. He was running, he wanted to increase the net disposable income of Hoosiers, he wanted to reform regulations, and he wanted to electrocute all the gays. We remember that.
They actually do sell this line. I mean, we have to tell people that you're joking.
Yes.
Because the press actually does sell this line. Well, what's the truth? What did he actually do?
Yeah, this is totally made up. So on one of Mike Pence's congressional campaign websites at some point, they said that he supported a bill to fund treatment for HIV and AIDS.
Oh, man, that's
pretty bad,
yeah,
that monster. And in there, it included a provision that some funds would be directed toward institutions that if people wanted to change their sexual behavior, they could get some therapy to change their sexual behavior. Now, let me tell you something. As a red-blooded American man, there are plenty of aspects of my sexual behavior that probably one should change. So that's where they get this from.
So let's take them at their word, and that means gay conversion therapy or whatever it means. I mean, of some sort. So that's one site that was put up in conjunction with a bill to fight AIDS.
This is classic political hackery, by the way, and I can tell you this because I've done it myself on campaigns. What you do is you hire these Oppo people to scour your opponent's website, and they find any little 3 words that they can rip out of context and turn into a television ad. And that's what happened here. So they found one line from one provision from a paragraph about supporting a bill to fund AIDS medicine and AIDS research, and they pulled that out, and that was supposed to be the big scare quote. And look, I don't mind that they did that. That's what politics is. But for journalists to pretend that this is reality.
This is a big problem.
But of course, that isn't the case. It's one line. You could do it with any candidate over any bill. the trouble with voting, the trouble with being a congressman is you have to vote for bills, and every bill has some line in it that can be taken out of context.
Right,
so
right.
you always have a terrible record, and they could do this with anybody. They're doing it with Mike Pence, and what it really shows is that the mainstream media are not journalists, because political activists would use that line. Journalists would not.
It is a huge problem. Did you happen to see, by the way, the Korean dance team or something like this?
I only watched the gymnastics, but I'm sorry. I did see the Korean dance team. They tweeted out. New York Times tweeted this. All of the mainstream media. These like little catchy phrases about how amazing it was. How look at this, but. What it really brought back to me was a memory of the death of Kim Jong-il. Did you, if people weren't ecstatic enough or excited enough, they'd be thrown in the gulag or they'd be killed.
Do you know that in 2006, 21 members of a North Korean cheering squad that had traveled to South Korea for an international athletic event, they came back and started talking about what they had seen in South Korea, so they sent them to prison. I mean, so you can bet that dance team was working really hard to get it right.
That is. You saw, when Kim Jong-il died, that you saw people were sobbing so much. And this is what we saw on camera, and I thought, if that camera were on me in North Korea, I'd be doing the best performance of my life. Tears would be coming out of everywhere.
So you're going to talk about this more in your show, right?
I'm going to talk about a different take on this, because it seems we've just said that these journalists are not journalists; they're political activists.
Yep.
What I want to talk about is the moment that the MSM began to hate the USA. This was not always the case. There was a time in this country where the mainstream media did not always try to subvert their own country, especially on foreign affairs. And we're going to explain why that changed. Spoiler alert, it's Walter Cronkite. That's the way it is.
That's the way it is. Thanks a lot, Knowles. A really good report. I'm glad you had to watch it, not me.
That's sad for me.
You know why you may ask yourself why the left loves these regimes, these communist regimes that slaughter millions. I mean, Stalin killed tens of millions of his own, murdered tens of millions of his own people, and they're sitting there talking about his beautiful subway system. It's like, yes, and it's made with the bones of murdered Russia. What are they talking about? The reason is that if you do not trust the people and you think that you are so much smarter than the people, then ultimately you've got to start saying to yourself, hey, we've got to stop the people from doing what they do. What do the people do? Some people have prejudices. Some people have ideas that you don't like. Some people are not so nice. So you don't want to trust them. You want to tell them what to do, and it works great. It's always going to work great as long as you erase the people who get in your way. I mean, everything works fine as long as you erase the people, but they just kind of forget about that. And they want to sit, the left wants to sit in the stands like the Olympic judges and tell us how good our ideas are, how good our products are, which materials we can use, which things we can say, how we should build our buildings, all this stuff. And it's no wonder they hate Donald Trump, because he keeps tearing apart the methods and systems by which they do that.